the free energy special interest group where science meets spirituality in the quest for truth and knowledge to free humanity and transform this planet into a paradise.
Hi, everyone. Hi. This is Crystal. I am the chair of the FESIG meetings, and I have my co-chair with me, Dr. Frezel and Pontus. Unfortunately, Pontus has to juggle two events, our FESIG one and his meditation event in his home. So folks, please excuse him. And he's a little bit shaken as well, rushing to get to this meeting to open up the Zoom room and had a little accident. Oh, well, we're sending you some love and healing, Pontus, to your car. I know you're not hurt. That's fine. So welcome, folks, to our FESIG 106 meeting. Today is the 9th of November, 2022. So we have our first session speaker, Kian 369, presenting anti-gravity and zero-point energy, the CARET Q4-86. He will explain the scientific principles of the CARET Q4-86 anti-gravity device and compare its operation with Cosmic Agency's interstellar navigation video series. And we have here with us Dale Harder of Cosmic Agency, the Taigitan Pleiadian, and has cracked the code, folks. So we're all ears. Actually, we were so lucky. We had Kian giving us a briefing earlier to physics members of the board at the helm earlier, like in October, a couple of weeks ago, and we were really bowled over. So we are so excited, Ken, that your presentations are superb, Ken. It's always some of the best that I've seen because you actually really work hard on the teaching aids so people could understand even some of the most complicated scientific technological explanations, and we thank you for that, Ken. Our R&D members are really bowled over, and we we recorded your video, and we presented it to the R&D team when we had our R&D meetings. We were really so fascinated. And then we have the second. But today, in this meeting, you're going to show us where you had cracked the code. That is so exciting. Yes. And the second session speaker, we have an Awakened Star Family teacher. He is Matthew Bell. And he is amazing. He has been my teacher for a while. And anyway, so do pen down in your diary the 107th FESIG meeting on the 7th of December. So hopefully we're going to line up some fantastic speakers so we can learn together from them. Yes, indeed. And Ken is a computer programmer by profession and has spent a lifetime to research the secret of anti-gravity. Ken did a mind-blowing presentation on anti-gravity and the nature of the universe. That's what the title was during FESIG's 93rd meeting on the 6th of October, 2021. He worked hard on putting together his presentation so you get to enjoy it so much. I want everyone to know that you can reach Kian by writing to him, Kian, Kian 369 @protonmail.com. He needs help, folks, okay? You've seen my messages out there in the MailChimp, in the, our Telegram group channel. Do join our Telegram group channel because the latest announcements are always there, okay?
Okay, I'll start right away because I have a lot of things to cover. The Palo Alto Research Laboratory, PACL, was located in Palo Alto, California. An anonymous internet user called Isaac claimed to have worked there as an engineer and computer scientist from 1984 to 1987. He leaked the CARET documents to the internet. Right. It consists of 3 separate document sets, 9 pages from the Q4 report from 1986, 1 inventory photo from the Q3 report of 1985, 6 pages from the linguistic analyst report of unknown dates, and 4 higher resolution photographs. According to the gaps in the page numbering, we are missing at least 173 pages. The organization that provided the artifact to PACL is blacked out on the Q4 cover page. The goal of the PACL research was to reverse engineer alien technology through a process they called extraction. PACL was provided with an alien artifact without knowledge of its origins or other related artifacts recovered with the craft. The goal of the extraction process was to reverse engineer the technology into a theoretical and operational understanding of the artifact and apply its principles into a usable product-oriented technology. In 1986, PACL had not yet completed the extraction process and its underlying principles were still unknown. The artifact had been recovered from a crashed alien craft. The research focused on 4 key subjects: the anti-gravity generator, its ability to record and project holograms, the language of the markings found in the craft, and a redacted subject. It is unknown whether the subject was blacked out by Isaac or by his research director. These projects operate under a need-to-know restriction. The anti-gravity abilities of the artifact extend to the generation of force fields around the craft, the dampening of G-forces inside the craft, spatial positioning of parts of the craft, and movement of doors and hatches. This means that all the structural elements of the spacecraft were held together by the generated anti-gravity effect without the need for nuts and bolts or welding seams. PACL uses the term personal anti-gravity as a description of the artifact's small weight and form factor compared to previously retrieved anti-gravity engines. Those previous engines were so heavy that those engines could only be inserted in a prototype craft with the use of another anti-gravity device. However, the anti-gravity generator in this package is only 60 centimeters in length, weighs less than 2.3 kilograms, and is of far superior technology than any other alien artifact retrieved before. It also creates anti-gravity effects magnitudes greater than previous artifacts of lesser technology. Personal anti-gravity in this context means anti-gravity for a craft the size of a car, like a tic-tac shuttle, but can be scaled up to any craft size and cargo payload. The artifact consists of 3 main components. The first component is the anti-gravity generator. The second component consists of 2 curved I-beam segments that, under the influence of the anti-gravity generator, move to their relative positions within the original construction of the craft. The anti-gravity generator was assigned the identification code A1. The I-beams were assigned the identification code A2 and A3. The only known method to control the anti-gravity generator A1 is through a small device identified as S1. There is something about this controller that is complex and top secret. It must contain an advanced computer system and possibly a neural link control interface, as I will show later on. The anti-gravity generator A1 has multiple operating modes and can project anti-gravity effects on specific objects within its field of influence, creating what PACL termed a rigid spatial relationship, RSR, between the generator A1 and the I-beams A2 and A3. This is the figure in the documents and the higher resolution photo of the device. An RSR creates a spatial relationship between objects separated by empty space, but movable together as if it were one solid object. Generator A1 consists of two cylindrical cores with spikes extending from each end. Both core segments feature an array of 3 arms that end in circular pads. And this is the I-beams and the higher resolution. And rigid spatial relationship, RSR, creates a spatial relationship between objects separated by empty space, but movable together as if it were one solid object. Oh, I just read it. What slide am I in? Right. Examination of the internal functionality of A1 had only started in the Q4 of 1986 and little was known at that time. However, the document states that the device does not contain any movable parts at all. A1 is one of a pair of identical generators retrieved from a single craft. So far, 3 operational modes of A1 have been discovered. In field mode, A1 creates an anti-gravity field of arbitrary size and shape, and the parameters of this field are defined by the controller S1. In component mode, A1 will manipulate the effects of gravity on individual objects such as the I-beams A2 and A3. Component mode is used for maintaining the physical construction of the craft design. In multi-mode, the field mode and component mode are both operational at the same time. The I-beams A2 and A3 differ in length, but weigh approximately the same. PACL thinks that the markings on the beams are related to the beam position within the RSR, as if it is a spatial programming language without the need for a compiler. Logically, the next text segment would be the overview of S1, but the whole segment is blacked out. Another figure of the I-beams in the document, the higher resolution photo. So you can clearly see that this is not an Earth language. Then there is more blacked out text and even more blacked out text. Considering the length of the overview of S1, we can conclude that this is the most complex component of all. Unfortunately, we do not have any pictures of S1, but part of it appear in the diagram later on. This is the figure in the document of the device operational in component mode. Notice that the I-beams are floating in the air. And this is the corresponding higher resolution photo. So there's nothing supporting the beams, and they have a spatial relationship with the generator. Next is a single page of the previous year's research report. I think these are internal parts of the generator A1. We have no reference to the size of the parts other than the stone tiles in the backgrounds. Part number 15 seems broken and the teeth of the inverted cogwheel are pretty banged up. So this is probably the second generator from the craft that had a catastrophic engine failure. There are at least 12 other part numbers not shown in the image and probably a lot more. After the CARET report was leaked, some pictures appeared showing these rings to be part of the hull of an alien-looking drone. I think those pictures are fakes to confuse people about the real purpose of the parts. The remaining documents are from the Linguistic Analysis Primer report. It starts at page 119, meaning a lot more is known to PECL than is known to us. Page 119 shows a symbolic diagram from an operation manual written in an unknown language. The page contains 3 annotations, 2 with part identification numbers and 1 with 2 question marks. This indicates that PECL does not understand the meaning of the diagram, that PECL did not create the diagram, and that it was retrieved from the crashed craft. What I have highlighted here is what I think symbolizes the controller interface of S1. Note that the 2 arrows of the annotation point to neuron-like symbols and that this is most likely a brainwave interface for the computer of S1. There are 5 components that show a circular city skyline-like barcode. I think that the 3 leftmost components are systems within the computer of S1 responsible for the 3 modes of operation of the anti-gravity generator A1. Part of the markings on the components look like they are numbers consisting of a variable number of dots in between double arches. The remaining pages are enlargements of parts of the previous diagram. On the right, I have highlighted the position of the zoomed-in elements with the full diagram. Here we see 3 identical components on the right interacting with the nucleus symbol on the left. These are the 3 pads on the side of the generator A1. The functionality of both sides would be identical. That is why it shows only 3 and not 6 pads in the diagram. I think the pads are electromagnetic sensors of some kind. The top left component seen here is what I think is the computer system responsible for managing the field mode of the generator. That is the mode that generates the general anti-gravity field. The bottom right component here seen is what I think is the computer system responsible for managing the component mode of the generator. This is due to the fact that the component mode has a higher level of complexity and uses feedback from the sensor pads coming in from the right. The last page shows 2 identical components. Both strange circular track lines halfway in their centers are identical. And the barcodes are identical too. They only differ in the text markings in the center. On the inside of part number 16, you will see 3 large metal rails, and below those are 3 thinner metal rails, connecting with their angled endpoints to the main ring. The rails look somewhat similar to the inner rings in the component symbols, so they could be related. These are the device capabilities listed so far. Please take special note of the multi-layered force fields, as it contains an important clue about its functionality later on. There is also one top secret capability not mentioned, and I will explain its operation at the end of the presentation. Before I can explain the internal working of this anti-gravity device, I must first explain the basics of anti-gravity. Otherwise, none of this is going to make sense. Therefore, I have made a short version of my video Anti-Gravity and the Nature of the Universe that I will play first. The light we see does not exist in that form. Can you hear that? Can see?
Yes, we can.
Yes? Okay, great. The light we see does not exist in that form in the real world. Out there is electromagnetic radiation of all wavelengths. We see only a tiny range of wavelengths as visible light. The visible light radiation triggers receptor cells in our eyes to produce electric signals that are then transported through sinews deep into our brain. Our eyes ignore all light outside the visible range. We do not see objective reality as it really is. Inside our brain, where the sun does not shine, the electric signals are transformed into a hologram that we experience as our existence. This hologram includes a partial copy of the outside world, sounds, the feeling of having a body, our thoughts and our feelings. The real world looks similar to this image. Everything you see, no matter how far away, is contained within your own consciousness. Outside of you is only a world of energy, vibration and frequency. We all live in our own personal hologram inside our head that is a copy of reality outside of our head. In this hologram copy, we experience the outside world as if there is light falling through our eye sockets into our inner being. Everything that you experience visually, like the wall of your room or a distant horizon or mountain range, is part of this hologram inside your head. The body that you think is you, because you feel it through your physical senses, is also constructed into your hologram from electric signals. Pain does not exist in your body, but is created from signals. Likewise, the sounds you hear in this hologram do not exist in reality, but they are constructed into this hologram from electronic signals from your eardrums.
Yeah, hi Tom. Yeah,
React
I've been
to
dealing
rapid
with
changes
Nicole
in
Fuller.
air pressure,
Got a feeling
not
she's not there
sounds.
anymore. I don't know why.
The forces of the universe that shape galaxies, solar systems, molecules and atoms are basically one and the same, but they act on different cosmic scales, causing in each cosmic scale similar but different effects. In order to understand what an atom is, we need to observe atoms on a scale that we can observe in real life. In a magnet, all the atoms are polarized to point into the same direction. The smallest magnet is an atom. We can study the behavior of atomic fields by looking at larger magnetic fields as if they were atomic sized. A magnetic field can be detected with ferrofluid. This fluid contains magnetite atoms suspended in oil. This ferrofluid can be used for creating a ferrocell, like in this video by Ken Wheeler. A ferrocell consists of two platters of optically flat glass with a thin layer of lubricant with ferrofluid in between. The glass is surrounded by a strip of LED lights that projects polarized light through the film of ferrofluid. When placed near a magnet, the reflection of the light on the magnetite atoms creates a three-dimensional hologram of the toroid field lines of the magnetic field. Every object with polarized atoms has a magnetic field in a higher domain, even materials that are supposedly not magnetic. All magnetic fields have the fundamental shape of a torus. They can be large, small, tall, wide or twisted depending on the atomic and molecular properties of the material. The magnetic field torus is created by the interference of two acting forces. The first force is the magnetic force that we know as the north and south pole of a magnet. The two poles are not opposite forces, but they are two sides of the same coin. The magnetic force comes from the center or zero point of the magnetic field torus, expanding up and down and eventually returning to itself through the opposite pole. The second force is the contracting dielectric force. It creates a spinning disk of energy perpendicular to the axis of the magnetic force. Particle theory calls this the electron cloud, and in magnetism they call this the Bloch wall, which are different names for the same force acting on different scales. The dielectric force disk is being held in between the poles of the magnetic force because both forces repulse each other. When two magnets are joined together at the opposite poles, they act together if it was one larger magnetic field. The contacting poles are shorted with each other, and the dielectric planes merge with each other because both seek the lowest pressure away from the magnetic force. In this video you see a plasma inside a magnetic field causing the spinning dielectric disk to become visible. What creates the magnetic and dielectric forces? If classical field theory is wrong, then so is quantum field theory. The Big Bang theory cannot be correct because something that does not exist can by definition not explode into existence. When there is no existence, there is no time. Therefore, the cause of the universe can only be outside of space-time in a dimension of infinity beyond the limits of our perception. This is where physics meets metaphysics. If the source of the universe is outside of space-time, then it is outside of our mental capability to understand it. But we can think of it as a dimension of an infinite point with no size or duration, and call it the one infinite creator. It contains everything that is, ever was, could have been, and can be. The created universe is holographic in nature and is being generated anew every cycle of Planck's time from this infinite point. The holographic universe is projected from this infinite point, from oneness into separation of space-time, through the slowing down of the frequency of the source signal into various dimensions of frequencies. These rays, in this image represented as light, interfere with themselves at cross points, creating the 0 points in three-dimensional space-time from which the magnetic and dielectric forces sprout into existence. Without the existence of consciousness, there would be no experience and no purpose for this hologram. Consciousness is therefore a fundamental principle in the universe. Space is not empty, but filled with dark energy, which is matter in a high state of frequency outside of our perception range. But we do interact with the effects of it. There is etheric energy flowing from the one infinite creator through the center of bodies on every cosmic scale, from the center of galaxies, the center of solar systems, and the center of planets. On each cosmic scale, this etheric energy differs in density and characteristics. Black holes are not supermassive stars that have collapsed upon themselves to suck in the rest of the universe out of existence. Black holes are the entry points of what is commonly called an Einstein-Rosen bridge. Stars, like our Sun, are the exit points of those. A star is a white hole that expels all matter and energy that went into a black hole somewhere else far away. Earth is submerged in etheric energy, or the dark matter we cannot see. This etheric energy behaves like a fluid, and the flow of this etheric fluid passes through us and through the rest of our three-dimensional world. The center of Earth, like any other planet, is an interdimensional sinkhole into which etheric energy can enter, but three-dimensional matter cannot. It is the flow of this energy that generates the effect of gravity. Gravity is not an attracting force. Gravity is the pushing side effect of the flow of etheric energy from outer space to inner Earth. When it passes through atoms, this energy flow interacts with the spinning energy disk of the atom's dielectric plane, causing physical resistance. The momentum of the energy flow is then transferred to the resisting dielectric disk that causes acceleration of the atom in the direction of the flow of energy. We are not attracted to Earth, but we are being pushed down towards it. The effect of gravity can be cancelled in two different ways. In the first process, a high-density superconductor is created in a magnetic field that offers no resistance to the flow of etheric energy. When there is no resistance for the etheric fluid, there is no transmission of momentum and no effect of gravity. This etheric superconductor can be created by adding counter-rotation to a spinning dielectric plane. Both the original rotation of the dielectric disk and the counter-rotation applied cancel each other out, resulting in a motionless dielectric disk that no longer offers resistance to the flow of etheric energy. In the second type of gravity cancellation, the signal from the one infinite creator that creates the atoms of an object are interfered with. Altering the signal indirectly causes changes to the characteristics of a magnetic field, or even changes to the position of the field in space and time. There are two types of anti-gravity generators. The first type uses counter-rotation in the dielectric field. This counter-rotation can be either electromechanical, or as in Otis Cars ROTC X1 design, or electromagnetic. The type of generator requires a wide dielectric disk and is therefore used in spacecraft of the disk type. This is considered to be somewhat primitive technology from an ET viewpoint. The second type of anti-gravity generators uses frequency manipulation to alter the source signal that creates the energy nodes of atoms. However, the source signal is not quantifiable or changeable directly. It is outside our experience of space and time. This frequency modulation method is comparable to audio cancelling by combining a sound signal with its inverse signal to dampen the amplitude of the sound. We must now examine the frequency dynamics outside 3D space-time, and that is best explained by Swaru of Era, an extraterrestrial woman in conversation with Gosia from Cosmic Agency.
As I mentioned before, the universe itself is a matrix of frequencies. For the Taygetan science, as for that of most similar races, this is not only a proven fact, but it is also exploitable or manipulable, being able to artificially modify its structure. To navigate at speeds higher than the speed of light, we must think differently. We should no longer think of maps with distances and positions, nor in motion vectors. We must think of primordial vibratory frequencies only. A primordial vibratory frequency is one that defines the oscillations of the subatomic components that make up the matter itself. It is the speed or frequency between each cycle of depolarization between the etheric field and the world or material plane in the sequence 124875/369 already described in Mechanics of Manifestation. To form an idea of what a stellar map by frequency is like, we must know that each location or place, like the Earth, for example, has a specific and irreplaceable frequency that defines it in the spacetime that we call the primordial or universal matrix. At Z represents the accepted average of the most primordial vibrational frequency of matter in 5th density. The base is the vibratory frequency of the element hydrogen at absolute zero in interstellar space. 1 Z is equivalent to 1 cycle per unit of time, and as the reference base of said unit of time, the perspective of the temporary duration of the crew of the ship taking the measurement will be taken. Unit SIT, or duration of unit of time inside the ship. This means that at Z cannot be completely accurate. However, it is enough to allow calculations to effectively guide a starship, even with small variations, which a crew will have to compensate in other ways during or after each trip if necessary. We must remember that time is relative to each consciousness and is never a constant. At absolute zero, there is no molecular movement, so the temperature is measured as zero or absence of molecular movement. And at this temperature, the vibratory frequency still persists at the subatomic level. The frequency or oscillation of ZZ of any place is the result of the sum and interaction of all other frequencies interacting with that place. Everything that exists in the universe is connected to each other by the same soup of frequencies that oscillate within a single medium, that is the ether, and the ether is pure consciousness. Ether is the original source. The mass and complexity of a specific object in the universe is the result of the accumulation of attention that this place receives from the original source or ether. The more attention you receive, the greater your mass, that is the same as the higher energy concentration. The reason why some object receives more attention will depend on the interaction it has with the other objects that surround it, since everything is interconnected. This applies to anything from large star objects such as suns or planets, to small things like a coin, a key, a nut, and even subatomic particles. Every object in particular has a purpose, and in turn is part of a larger object, that in turn is part of an even greater object, and so on until it reaches the whole, the universe, or the original source. Everything that exists is for a reason, and nothing is fortuitous or accidental within the universal primordial matrix. In a stellar map by frequencies in ZEZ units, or in its abbreviation DZ, the more decimals the number has, the greater the precision with which you describe a position within the universe. As it happens in any potential energy medium for solid objects to be inside it, it is necessary to create standing waves, where said solid objects are formed in the nodes of said standing waves. To create them, we need a frequency harmonic, or otherwise the mechanics of the creation of a node or point of manifestation of matter would be impossible. Said harmonic frequency will always come in the form of mathematically perfect geometry, as has already been described in previous works. So the direction or location of a specific place in DZ units will always correspond to predictable and ordered mathematical geometric fractals, generating a matrix of ordered and studiable information that is the same as the energetic web that the universal matrix makes or manifests in its physical form. Bearing in mind that everything is connected to each other and that a frequency of a specific place as its direction in the universe is closely related and interconnected with all others, also depending on the others in the form of mathematical geometric sequence, the direction of an unknown place using dz factors coupled to a harmonic frequency is now predictable and pre-calculable. This allows to navigate a ship within the soup of existing frequencies mostly unknown, only knowing the interaction between the frequencies of a place. This is only knowing the harmonic of the frequency that controls or dominates over a specific space sector. Now imagine a stack of papers, each one on top of another, and each one filled with numbers that are equivalent to specific numbers on the sheets of paper that preceded, but with a slight increase or decrease in value that is progressive among more sheets of paper. Each sheet would represent a fixed moment in time, and the sheets stacked on top of each other would represent a progression in time, which is the movement of the frequencies representing objects. The sheet immediately below our base sheet will be the previous moment in time, and the next sheet the next moment. The further a specific sheet from our first base sheet is, the further away it will be in the past or in the future. But all the sheets are fixed, and they just are, as is the whole stack. It is only the consciousness of an observer who will have the attention to follow the progression of the numerical value of a particular object that will animate or give meaning and interpretation to a progression of fixed frequencies of said object in question. When traveling in supraluminar mode, not only should the computer be given the address of the destination as a frequency, it should also be given the data of when we should arrive at destination. In our example with the stack of papers, the destination 14.83002 dz, Earth, will only be one of the parameters to be entered, data bilh in Taigetan, equivalent to a position within a grid of our sheet of paper. The next data to enter in our computer will be when, data Naal in Taigetan. That will represent the moment in time of the Earth where the ship will reach its destination, represented here as in which sheet of paper we wish to arrive. The ship has an exact frequency map in its computer. At will, it envelops itself in a high-energy toroid through the principle of dominant frequencies. The exact energetic frequency of the toroid is imposed on the very ship and all that is within it, controlled by the computer. It changes its exact frequency to make it compatible with the place of destination, at the expense of ceasing to be compatible with the frequency of the place of origin. As the electromagnetic plasma of the motors is being expelled towards the back at a controlled frequency and according to the entrance of the nose of the ship, all with basic toroidal mathematics, the toroid is closed, or a high-energy toroid produced by the engines is generated. What the toroid does, we can return to the toroid itself later. We have a basic energy law at work here, the law of dominant frequencies. It says that any frequency stronger than another or others will turn the weakest ones into itself, will assimilate them. The energetic toroid of a ship will enclose the ship itself that emits it and everything that is inside it in a bubble where its existential vibration frequency, call it density as in 3D or 5D, will be the exact equivalent to that emitted by the engine. The ships in hyperspace are not moving. It is space that moves around them. Hyperspace flight is not propulsion. It is a change of vibrational frequency state. It is the opposite of what they think. They think of moving the ship through space, while it is moving the space surrounding the ship. The ship is not moving. It can make the jump being static at 0 kilometers per hour. What it does is that its compatibility no longer agrees with the place of origin and does agree with that of the destination. Remembering that from the ether, which is from where this technology operates, everything is now and everything is here. There are no distances.
And I got this question from someone. Robert, do the atoms of the physical body separate during the jump and then come back together, or how does it work?
They are thinking in material terms. The atoms are fine. And the molecules. They don't separate. They don't diffuse. They just stop being compatible with one place and are compatible with the new one, from the point of view of the ether. That's why this technology is beyond Star Trek by several thousand years. Thousands of years from the terrestrial point of view and its false line of technological development.
The only difference between frequency-based anti-gravity hovering and warp mode is the destination. Now let's compare parts of the CARET device with what Cosmic Agency has published about comparable technology so far, starting with the sensor pads. Please note that each sensor consists of two circular pads, one in the center surrounded by a ring.
For the computer of a ship to detect and determine the exact frequency of matter in the surrounding area, very sensitive magnetic-based frequency sensors are used. They are placed along the hull of a ship in special places, such as the nose of the craft, wings, stabilizers and leading edges, tail fins, spine, and underbelly, always in specific places that are subjected to different flight dynamics or different exposure pressure dynamics with the surrounding area the ship is in. These sensors detect changes and disturbances in a magnetic field like strength, direction of flow, rotation, angles, and flux. They work with two aspects or detection components, one that detects the overall magnetic field and the other that detects variations within that field called vector components. These are the individual points of the magnetic field and how they relate to one another. Magnetic fields are closely related to gravity fields, being essentially the same thing. Such as the light spectrum does, magnetism also has a spectrum of its own, with a metallic common magnet on one low frequency side, and gravity as from a planet on the high frequency other. The gravity is a background high frequency flow as described above, and the magnetic field is a concentration point within that flow, usually of a much lower frequency. The only difference between them is only their power differential, or local points of view, vector components. So, we can detect a gravity flow of a location by comparing the known magnetic flow value within an instrument with the changes that occur in it when exposed to an external environment. Every electric current has a magnetic value, and having a wide array of electric current strengths inside the sensor, voltage and amperage, and observing minute changes within, will determine the value of the gravity frequency field that is surrounding and affecting it by recording the changes in the electrical resistance of the magnetic field. These wide array of minute electric currents and their magnetic fields continuously fluctuate with a set of precise parameters.
How does the ship's computer gather frequency data of a new location where it is located?
That was already explained in Stellar Navigation 1, but I will repeat it. The way a computer, a ship, does it is by using an interferometer, which basically measures the passage of an electron between one point and another, and the manner or volume with which the electrons pass from one point to another by tunneling effect determines the amount of gravity there is at the point that the sensor stimulates. And from there, the computer translates the gravity reading into frequency factors that the computer can use to alter the output frequency of the engines. Given that the initial value, or base gravity in the ether in hyperspace, is known as a constant in the equation during the calculation. Although this constant is not perfect, it is stable enough to be used as a constant in spacecraft navigation systems. It is the most approximate value of the ether at rest when viewing or understanding the ether as a high-frequency fluid in which the spacecraft itself is immersed. On Earth, the smallest interferometer with similar capacity to the sensors of any spacecraft with hyperspace capacity measures kilometers long. It is in the form of a ring and is called particle accelerator or hadron collider.
The only difference between frequency-based anti-gravity hovering and warp mode is the destination frequency entered into the computer. In anti-gravity mode, the computer component vector near the craft is calculated from sensors and the craft gradually hovers to the new location. In warp mode, a frequency location far away is entered into the computer, creating an almost instant frequency compatibility to a location far away. The first step in source frequency modulation is creating the magnetic field torus that represents the dominant frequency of every atom inside its field. The generator A1 has the optimal shape of the expression of the magnetic force. Since the magnetic force cannot exist without the dielectric force, its existence will immediately instantiate the dielectric plane inside the center of the magnetic field. Inside the dielectric plane of the generator A1, we find its second secret. What I have highlighted in orange are U-shaped metal bars with each leg of the U-shape covered with a wound coil and inserted in the socket of the body of the device. In the picture, we can see only 3 of the metal bars. The view of the other 5 are obstructed by the device, but are placed equally all around the body. The opposing coils are connected so that the metal bars transport the magnetic force North Pole into the next electromagnet's South Pole, creating an infinite loop. Since the magnetic force never leaves the metal core bars, it creates a magnetic field that is turned inside out. These 4 magnetic force loops correspond with the 4 loops shown in the alien diagram that we showed earlier. In the diagram, there appears to be waves flowing around the 4 infinite loops, indicating that this is the signal emitted that is added to or subtracted from the dominant frequency of the field torus. The CARET document mentions the creation of multi-layered force fields around the craft. Next, we are going to examine how such field layers are created.
Remember the dominant frequency principle? You are using so much energy in your toroidal field that it becomes the dominant frequency of the immediate area. It is like producing several toroids, one inside another. Your ship or suit is in the middle, and it is the energy engine. So when you get a hit from an energy weapon, it gets to the outer layer that disperses the energy a little, then to the next, and disperses it even more, and so on. By the time it reaches the inner level of the toroids, placed each one inside the other, like an onion, so the energy of the impact is dissipated among them, and actually is feeding the cocoon or the shield toroid.
Okay, but I want to make a force field or a shield, say, as a door or to close off a hole in the spacecraft. How would this be done?
You need an engine, a magnetic vortex generator.
It would seem the toroids are the basis for all field generation.
Basis of just about everything. A magnetic vortex generator. A starship engine can describe this better. The suit and the starship are both the things that use shields. Suits and starships use the same principle to generate their shields. Easier to describe with an engine. Starship engines work as a turbine, like a jet engine. They are made of counter-rotating thin interior turbines. One goes in one direction, the next in the opposite, clockwise, counterclockwise. They are spinning around 100,000 RPM, average at standard military power. That is, with no added extra power. Each interior turbine is fed with a very high voltage, very high amperage electric current in the TeV range, that is trillion electron volts. One turbine in one direction is getting one voltage polarity and the next the opposite. As they spin, they invert the resulting electromagnetic high energy field inside the nucleus of the engine's turbine. And as everything, it has a negative and a positive. So the energy dynamics flow results in the forward of the turbine having one polarity and the aft the opposite, with the flow of charged electrons. This is the resulting flow, and in the process it creates a cocoon. That cocoon can be reproduced several times like an onion manipulating the relationship in exiting electromagnetic frequency from each counter-rotating turbine. The interior of the turbine will have a distributor, like part at the base of the magnetic levitating zero-friction axle, like an electric motor, like the brushes for it. The interior of the turbine will have a distributor, like part at the base of the magnetic levitating zero-friction axle, like an electric motor, like the brushes for it, but with no touching parts. That piece will give each interior turbine its nominal charge. The relationship between them changes the output of each component field and the resulting average for the entire complex of fields enveloping the ship.
The last item in our verification checklist is the CARET device's ability to project a tractor beam and to record and project holograms with it. Please note that the following video clip explains it with Taigetan technology and that there are more ways to implement this, just like there are more ways to boil water.
Nearly any ship, big or small, comes equipped with a tractor beam. It is used for many things, from simple cargo hauling, bringing things up and down from a ship, or it can be used to pull or push large objects or even another ship. The beam that is used to achieve this is a controlled gravity field. This is achieved using a spherical-shaped turbine with an opening on one end. This turbine has a series of internal concentric spheres like an onion would have, each one of them spinning in the opposite direction from one another. One in one direction, the next in the opposite one, the next in the former, and they are made of a special non-magnetic ceramic and metal alloy. Each sphere is filled with enriched mercury in a high fluid state. Each individual concentric rotating sphere is fed with a computer-controlled high-energy electric current, and the counter-rotating movement at high RPM among them creates a magnetic vortex inside the core of the main sphere. When the energy is high enough, this resulting magnetic plasma will start to glow with a very intense brilliance out of the large hole in the main sphere. And this light is then passed through a series of lenses that are used to focus and concentrate the light for it to be able to be projected as a large beam of concentrated low diffusion light, as a laser would be. These special lenses are inside a cylindric drum made up of several thousands of high-energy computer-controlled nano-electromagnets placed in a hexagonal honeycomb pattern, and they are made of or formed by high-energy hologram projectors embedded within the honeycomb. These lenses are not made of any material such as glass. They are a hologram, but their high-energy nature has the same effect over the plasma light beam as if they were a solid object, but with the added advantage of them being completely modifiable at will to control their effects on the exiting light beam. These hologram lenses, combined with the high-energy nano-electromagnets, change and control the internal frequency of the exiting plasma light with high precision. The exact relationship, distance, and the relative speed on each concentric counter-rotating spheres results in a change in the frequency output of the plasma concentrated frequency light field they generate, and are controlled by the computer, and they are spun using the same principle of an electric motor. These frequency changes within the plasma light of the beam are the equivalent of a controlled gravity field within the light beam in relationship to its surroundings, because of their controlled high energy nature. The ship using the tractor beam has special frequency sensors that provide the main computer with the necessary information to determine the exact frequency of the gravitational flow of the area surrounding it. Once you have determined that frequency, you can now generate the exact opposite with your tractor beam, and all objects within will no longer be affected by the gravitational field of the surrounding area. They will be under the influence of the tractor beam, and manipulating the frequency output of the beam will determine whether the objects inside will move up to the ship or down from the ship, and minute changes in the frequency control the speed these objects will move while inside its area of influence. While the main counter-rotating concentric spheres control the main frequency total power output of the tractor beam, the high-energy magnets inside the exit drum, combined with the holographic lenses, control the minute changes of frequency and details within the beam. The high-energy holographic lenses can take any shape and form to make the tractor beam serve also as a projector. The holographic lenses can result or form an exact shape to a subatomic level, all controlled by the computer. This shape is formed by exact frequencies of magnetism and light in an exact relationship between them. That exact relationship between them is what determines or forms the shape of the object. This can be seen or explained as a mathematical frequency construct as explained above. This means that the tractor beam can project any shape onto the ground and onto a frequency field at will. The controlled high-energy frequencies of the tractor beam, resulting as a gravity field, if set at enough and at an exact power rate, can change the frequency of the matter under its influence, using the dominant frequency principle. When an object has one specific frequency of matter and is exposed to another of higher power and energy, it will change to match the stronger one. The combination between the computer-controlled high-energy electromagnets and the holographic projectors that are capable of minute detail at a molecular level results in a precise frequency matrix formed within the exit honeycomb cylinder of the tractor beam that will subsequently transfer it into an external frequency matrix or into the so-called exterior world.
The question here is whether the opening seen here is the tractor beam exit opening as described in the previous video. Considering the fact that the CARET document author stated that the generator does not have any moving parts whatsoever, I think that the field torus around the device is generated with fixed electromagnets and not with counter-rotating cylinders like the Taigetans use. Swaru mentioned a series of holographic lenses consisting of nanomagnets in a hexagonal honeycomb structure to project the tractor beam outwards. Parts 14A and 14B show a honeycomb-like structure in the inside of the rings, here highlighted in orange. The red ring in the center appears to be for electricity distribution to whatever is in the orange structure. The red blocks on the outside may be part of this energy circuit and probably connect to the spikes on the outside of the generator. I think that the main purpose of these spikes is to inject extra energy into the dominant field torus, and the two long spikes at the end also act as guides for the magnetic force component, making the field torus longer. The smallest spikes are connected below the first and smallest ring to a spike in the middle series of spikes. If you look in the gap between the rings, you'll see there are holes in the cylinder of the body below the second broader ring. The second ring also has extra airflow slits on the outside. The purpose of these holes may be cooling the device during the operation. We may be able to create a prototype for experimentation by using two single direction wound roding coils in series along a center metal bar with the infinite magnetic force loops in between the two roding coils. If you look at the lower right diagram, the side of the roding coils go where the green vectors are. Since the polarity of one coil feeds into the opposite polarity of the other coil, this would create one magnetic field around both with the magnetic force loop in its direct dielectric plane in the center. For optimization, research into room temperature superconducting materials may eventually be necessary. The photo of generator A1, active in component mode, does not show any connected wires. The power source of the device must therefore be self-contained and self-sustained. Electricity and magnetism are like two phases of states of the same phenomena, just like liquid and steam are both phases of water. Both electricity and magnetism can be converted into the other. The last unexplained complex component in the diagram interacts with the field around the magnetic force loops. Inside the diagram component, we can see a sequence of waveforms. If we look closely behind the U-bars of the magnetic force loops, we can see that there is something hidden behind it, slightly bulkier than the coils. It looks like metal bars or pipes in an inverted U shape. The legs go into the generator body behind the sockets of the magnetic force loops, so are probably not part of it. I think they collect the energy from the inverted magnetic fields, depolarization. This energy can then be used to sustain the power needs of the device's electromagnets. This would be the ultimate zero-point energy generator.
The equations that control the internal dynamics of any reciprocating wave, toroid, are based on mathematics base 12, with the principle that the base numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11 represent the expanding part of the toroidal wave, and the numbers 3, 6, 9, 12 represent the contracting waves. But not the waves themselves returning to the nucleus, but to the energetic dynamics that forces these waves to return to the nucleus. An energetic dynamic 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11 is created, and another one in 3, 6, 9, 12 with exact opposite charge. What happens when we have opposite charges of equivalent frequency? A spark discharge. And that is the basis of a zero-point reactor, described in a few words and with a lot of missing information. Notice that Tesla is missing numbers 10, 11, and 12. If you insist on 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 3, 6, 9, the frequencies between one side and the other are not equivalent, and no spark will form. Very beautiful image, but wrong, and it is visible to the naked eye. The dynamics between 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 and 3, 6, 9 are not equivalent. There is more flux or energy flow on the 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 side. The 0 point of discharge in the center of the image is not in the geometrical center of the energetic dynamics, as it is not in the visible center of that figure. It is not centered. The correct image would have it in the exact center.
This animation is a work in progress, and I am still learning to create complex 3D designs, so please bear with me. The metal bars' magnetic force loops are not supposed to touch each other in the middle, so I have to work on that. I have reduced the number of coil windings for illustration clarity. The north and south poles of the magnetic force flow in opposite directions in the same infinite loop. Ideally, we would use room temperature superconducting metals for this loop. When the magnetic force runs through a superconductor material, it becomes indiscernible whether the energy is inside or outside the magnetic force's 0 point, turning the magnetic force's 0 point into a circle. The folding of the magnetic force field lines into a single loop turns the magnetic field and the dielectric force inside out, creating a miniature sun on the etheric side. Normally, the dielectric force manifests itself as a spinning disk, but now the arms of the disks are not constrained by the magnetic force around it, allowing the dielectric energy streams to flow outward without resistance. The dielectric force also has a form of polarization, clockwise spin and counterclockwise spin. By turning the field torus inside out, the 0 point of the dielectric force turns into a cylinder. In between the coils, both the clockwise and counterclockwise spinning dielectric forces make contact with each other, resulting in a dielectric depolarization of energy into electricity on the physical side. This electric energy potential draws more electricity from the dielectric force as it moves away from its origin through the depolarizing cylinders. Then it travels to the end of the wire where the electricity potential depolarizes back into the ether. We can connect all the magnetic coils in the device to this electricity output and still have an excess of electricity potential that can be used for other things. Every magnetic field is part of a larger field on a higher scale. The 8 mini-suns together form their cumulative 0 point torus in the higher domain. The inside-out dielectric 0 point cylinder receives an inverted source frequency or anti-signal and modifies the dominant frequency torus 0 points source signal accordingly. I think that encoding the electricity to the coils with variations in power and frequency can do that. This can be visualized as creating waves in the ether, the fabric of space-time. If you would point the emitter suns to the center of the emitter ring, then the magnetic force loops on the outside, then you have a teleportation portal or Stargate that you can walk through. However, great precautions have to be taken while testing this part of the device because the exact frequencies and results are yet unknown and potentially destructive. The Philadelphia experiment is one experiment that went wrong. The design of the CARET anti-gravity device exactly matches the principles of frequency manipulation-based anti-gravity. Therefore, I believe that the PACL document and its anti-gravity device are absolutely real. The military-industrial complex has hidden the existence of this technology for the last 30 years. Energy slavery is a crime against humanity. Everything we can currently buy consists of only 10% resource and time costs and 90% energy and transport taxation. But now we can change the future for the benefit of all of humanity. As the rediscoverer of these extraterrestrial device operating principles, I declare this technology and all future derivatives to be unpatentable and free to use by everyone for the benefit of humanity. Please share this knowledge with everyone you know. Thank you for listening, and over to you, Crystal.
Thank you, Kian. Wow. What an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. That is so
You're
much that
welcome.
we're learning from you. You really did crack the code. And you brought those editings from Gosha's videos, which we were so, fascinated
Those
with
videos
anyway,
are
because
great.
it's so relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll post the source list to the chats.
Oh, yeah, of course. We have to credit her. Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, if you could give me the list, that'd be great. I will write to her personally as well to thank her. Yeah. Thank you so much. Right. Kim, that is really amazing. Over to you, Fres, for the Q&A, a very quick one because Matt will be doing his second session very soon.
Very excellent.
Fres, co-chair.
Yes, thank you so much. And once again, Kim, a wonderful presentation. And we're slow, the R&D team here is slowly trying to quickly absorb the information that you just presented again. And we can't pick it apart. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I can't pick it apart too. Like everything that was published through Cosmic Agency, like the last 5 years, matches exactly the design of the device. So there's no doubt that this is the real thing.
Yeah. We've looked at several devices. We've picked apart a lot of the free energy devices and stuff. This is one of our favorite designs, and then you come in and it's like, oh, okay. This is way beyond what we were looking at. What I'd like to do is maybe bring Dale into the discussion right now. Dale Harder, would you like to talk with Keith?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Dale,
no problem.
I must tell the audience that Dale works with Gosha when it comes to the propulsion anti-gravity technology, because he used to work for NASA, right, Dale? Yeah, and being part of the Titan crew as well, ground crew. Dale has a lot to say here, right?
You actually had one of my quotes were in
Yes.
his presentation. You could hear me in the background talking with my sister, Square Root.
Yeah, we could hear your voice. Yes.
I was surprised, but thanks. So in any case, yeah, most of that information I was privy to and am familiar with, and concur. Swaru has such an enormous amount of information and so forth. And when I came to do my mission here from the ship, as I am still attempting to do. I retained much of that knowledge, and so we were able to discuss it back and forth. Most of you know that Gosia is one of us as well. So there's only a couple of us here on planet at this point in time. But she's not as technically minded as I am. I am actually a spaceship designer and pilot, along with a few other things that I do. And but it's been a fantastic thing to be able to talk with my family again and be involved. So you've got the information and stuff there, apparently. Kian, you've done a great job with presentation on it and everything. Now it's just a question of getting humanity to the point of being able to understand and apply those concepts. They're actually not that difficult. They're not counterintuitive. They do make sense, but just expansion of the knowledge and get away from the idea of standard physics and using base 12 and so forth. Those are the key.
Yes.
So we're almost at the point, I think, where humanity is capable of replicating some of that that technology. There's some pretty heavy duty stuff in there, especially creating miniature or micro Merkaba that are created of crystal and quartz and absolute perfection, and then suspending them in the torus fields, so that you've got an onion layer type of thing, and you've got the field where all these Merkaba are rotating and transferring their energy back and forth. So you've got a torus within a torus within a torus, and that's how our engines work on the spacecraft, and it's all done with free energy. Mm-hmm. So they're generating terawatts of power. There are 4 on the standard craft, the Toleka, and they are mega structures, but boy, fascinating stuff. So don't let me ramble here. Please go on.
Oh, it's lovely to hear what you are talking about, you know, what comes to mind now, because our platform certainly is very exciting because it brings so much of what all of you could bring together. And once we get the funding, we'll be able to start many R&D teams, each to its own specialization. Like Dale, you know, we could put you and Kian together, and Gosia and Swaru, and we can start building spacecrafts since Kian has cracked the code. And our next speaker, the second speaker, Matt, is here with us. Hi.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Gosia as well. I speak with her regularly, and they're very much part of my family as well. Those lovely Taigetans. So yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And seeing how familiar the teachings are here with what we've been going through with our R&D teams. Press, I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Well, we've basically overwhelmed everybody in the room at this point with what was presented, and there is multiple layers of technology that has been discussed and expanded upon. And so we take a look at the toroidal fields as they're generated. Some of the work that I do as a teacher, as an instructor, is basically the fractal components of it. And basically it was enunciated that you start out with hydrogen and then you go beyond that, and it's just octaves. And you take up 2 hydrogen molecules, that's 2 different points in space, and there's a connecting line between them, communication between them. You add another molecule, oxygen, you have water. Now you have a beginning of a triangular shape, which is the next step in the geometry of this fractal. And you add one more point, and it's not a cube. It's a pyramid shape. And you add one more point, now you have the cube. So we have the first set of numbers that was related in the presentation. 1, 2, 3, 4. You double it, you're at 8. You double it again, you're at 16. Or you do a side number which gets you to 12. And this is part of the universe of this fractal, from the very small to the very large. So we go from something that's taking up smaller than the space of a drop of water, of course, to an entire galaxy or universe of galaxies. So as I said, there's a lot of information that was been presented today, and you just dumped a bunch of stuff onto the world and said, hey, okay, not patentable, now let's get working.
Chris, and I remember you teaching the R&D teams on the vortex mathematics, and it's all falling into place, isn't it? And I often wondered, when I was watching Gaussia's videos on the navigation technology and the toroidal mathematics as well, with the 369 12 base mathematics, I was thinking, gosh, how are we going to put all this together? How I wish someone would do that, put it all together and crack the code. And here we have Kian doing that for us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Exactly. And basically, as I tell the research team, as we go through this, you have it all. You've been given it all. It's just now, what do you need it to do? I've changed my verbiage. Not what do you want it to do, what do you need it to do? Let's take care of the needs. And then after we got the needs taken care of, then we can go after the wants. So we've got a lot of needs on this planet that we have to take care of very, very soon, or like yesterday. So let's start working on what do we need to solve, and then we get to our wants in a minute. But this is great presentation. Crystal, back to you.
I know it is. I was just going to say that each brings a little piece, and Kian has pieced it together like a jigsaw puzzle from a Tesla coil, Tesla 369, and 12 base mathematics, and we had the Otis Car as well that Kian has pulled on together into this whole big piece of a puzzle. And then Gaussia's navigation stuff with Dale asking the right questions from the crew up there. It's so good. It's so fascinating. Wow, I can't wait to produce this video and publish it, so we can look it again with magnifying glass, and we'll say, okay, this is how it works. With the onion layers that you're explaining, Kian, and the opposing directional flow of the energy, and you explain how 0-point energy is coming from, and that is so good, isn't it, Fres? I think we're learning so much from you. Yeah. So we have the top R&D team members here as well, who are at the helm here, present, learning from you, Kian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So do we have any more questions? Any questions from anybody before we adjourn it to the next session? I could stay up all night because this is so good.
You're on the right track.
Yep, we are.
Absolutely.
I wish I could go home. I'm getting a little tired out, but keep
we are
trying.
all waiting to get home.
Thanks,
Beam me
Kian.
up, Scotty.
Good job.
Right, Fres, do you want to have any more points to add before we adjourn it to the next session?
We can talk about co-creation, where we as beings on this planet, as was brought up, we create our part of the hologram inside our head, in our brain. It is not an observation of reality. It is a reproduction, a holographic image inside, it's electrochemical in it. And we realize that we do have a connection to source. And so you can't take the creator out of the creation. And if we're the creation, we've got the creator, we've got source in us. It's how we apply it. And as we go forward, we apply for the benefit of all is a great message. and we create a new world. One of the comments that was in the chat was, casting of, spelling is casting of spells is basically creation. It's another way of explaining this co-creation of what we call it shared reality.
Right. Not forgetting the Rodin coil stuffs. Kian has put it together as well, which is so relevant with what we're learning in the teams. Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's a very good point. Real good point. Thank you very much. Does this tie in reverse of engineering of ourselves? I'm weary of waiting for the celestial chamber. Can we learn to reverse engineer my body while waiting? Well, I'm with you, and that's what I'm trying to do too. So it seems the potential is there if we will it to be. If it wasn't possible, the placebo effect wouldn't work. So it means that we can heal ourselves and we can backward engineer our better self or better. This is a spacesuit that we're wearing for our consciousness. So why can't we change it physically once we know that we are connected to source? Kian, did you want to jump in real quick before, because I riffed on that real bad? Go ahead.
What was the question?
Does this tie with reverse engineering of ourselves? I am weary of waiting for the celestial chamber. Can I learn to reverse engineer my body while waiting?
Yes, you can. Only the problem that we are dealing with in 3D is that the ideas and convictions that we have about ourselves are standing in the way. Like if you have a problem in your body, then you can in theory imagine your body to be healthy and change your body in that way, but it is just as difficult as experiencing that you do not have a body. Like this this experience that we have goes far beyond like having an opinion or an idea. There are certain ideas that it's very difficult to separate them from, and that's what most people will. That's why most people will find it difficult to do that sort of spiritual healing of the body, and I have not been able to do that either.
Right. Thank you. Again, I think we need to move on to the next session now. So shall I press?
Yes,
Okay.
Paul Simon quoted, of all the stuff I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. I had to paraphrase it for sensory for the recording, but for all this crud that I learned in school, it's a wonder we can think at all. And the same thing goes with what we think about our body and about ourselves. And so great point, Kian. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kian. Thank you for working so hard on your presentation that is so brilliantly illustrated with your animation. And I'm really bowled over with the animation that you did on how this CARET thing's working with the two toroids. Your super presentation is really fantastic. Thank you so much. So there being no other business now, this first session of the 106 FESIG meeting is adjourned to the second session. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Kim.